All Things TechIE podcast is a product of the Extreme Media Network. For advertising and sponsorship opportunities, please visit www.extrememedia.ie. That's XTREME media.ie.
Hello guys, Justin Dawson with you, episode 55. It's been 3 years. It's been a lockdown, a pandemic. It's been talking to some great people in the AV industry throughout the years, and here is a special 2-hour special of what we covered during the past 3 years. From the lockdown to thinking it was all about COVID-19 was all going to take 2 weeks of lockdown. That was one of the funniest episodes I think I did, episode 22 or 23, both of them great episodes. Also talking about drones and talking about ransomware and conferences and Simon with his new baby boy and Simon changing job, me changing job. What a 3 years this has been. I hope you've had some great memories of listening to, and if you have taken part in some of our episodes, thank you. Our subscriber numbers on YouTube have gone well above the 500 subscribers on YouTube, which I'm just shocked and amazed. Twitter followers are ranging around 2,000 or so, and then our listenership figures is through the roof. And love the fact that we have hit into the top 10 on many occasions in the Apple iTunes podcast charts, both in Ireland and Australia. For some reason, Australia loves us as well. Thank you so much for everyone that's tuned in. Don't forget to tell your friends about this podcast. It's episode 50 of the All Things TechIE podcast, a special edition looking back on the past 3 years of the All Things TechIE podcast.
Audiovisual from an Irish perspective. This is the All Things TechIE podcast.
It is the All Things TechIE podcast, episode 3. We're up to 3.
Ooh.
Yeah, we thought we would give up on this, Simon, after like episode 1.
Now, since we got so popular in Australia,
Yeah,
that kept us going.
we love you, Australia.
Yeah.
You're awesome. We're going to get into other charts as well, hopefully.
No, it'd be nice to break America.
Break America,
actually,
yeah.
Since we're about Ireland, maybe break Ireland.
Yeah, break Ireland. Yeah, well, we are following up on like AV Magazine doing some articles on us, and AV Tech Europe doing some articles on us.
Well.
Before we start and go in with the theme music, I want to thank people for nominating me once more into the AV Awards. I'm in the finals again.
So back tie again.
Black tie again.
Red carpet.
Red carpet. Maybe no Kieran this time, unfortunately.
Wined and dined.
But I'd better actually take Jen for one episode. Shall we hit into the program?
Go for it.
All Things TechIE podcast, brought to you by two tech junkies, Justin Dawson and Simon Lang. For more, visit www.allthingstech.ie for All Things TechIE.
We are also actually playing around with doing live streaming of our program and doing it as a video on YouTube as well. So where you can see our ugly mugs.
That's not good.
It's great fun.
I think our rating is going to drop now.
How you got involved in audiovisual? Was it always your main interest? What would you be doing instead? And what tips you have for the future of people that's coming into audiovisual? So let's start off with yourself, Joe. How did you get involved in audiovisual?
Originally went to the University of Southern California for the recording engineering program, which is considered the best in the world. It's been ranked that way for decades. And but I just happened to find a professor who I absolutely loved, and I had done a lot of mixing and live mixing for a lot of very popular bands, and had gophered at a number of the different record recording studios throughout LA. And so it bored me to go through all the theory classes and the music theory classes. So I ended up finding a professor I love, got my degree in philosophy, and then I ended up getting my master's in applied biblical studies and my PhD in technically theology at church production. So I ended up taking, my 25 years in the entertainment industry, which is where I really made all my money, in the business development side of the entertainment industry, and kind of combined that full circle.
So I am Krista Bender, and my current position is I am a client services manager for Pivot Communications.
So my name's Jonathan Owen. I work for the University of Warwick. I'm the service owner for learning spaces and collaborative environments.
Yeah, so I'm James Scott, and I'm currently a events and digital media technical specialist.
Well, the first time around in college, I studied mostly general studies and a lot of arts and science. I did a lot of pottery. And no, I wasn't a fan of the movie Ghost, but I did a lot of pottery first time around. And then I took a break and started working full time. And then I got into AV because my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, he was in AV. And he knew of a position that was opening up at a company. So I went and applied, and I started working at an integrator in the inside sales department there. So I worked there at that integrator for 10.5 years. And while I was there, got, various manufacturer certifications, got my CTS. And then I left that integrator to go work for another integrator for a few years. And now I am working for a marketing company that focuses on the audiovisual industry.
Well, actually, I came from the theatre background.
Okay.
So I all through the school, I was a sort of the theatre drama technician all through school. And then at college, I did a BTEC high national diploma in theatre technology. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I went to a drama college where I did a Bachelor of Arts in lighting design.
Right.
So I thought I'd be a lighting technician or designer for either the stage or concerts or drama shows.
I didn't really study anything, so I didn't actually end up going to university at all. Okay. So I drifted into audiovisual. So I finished college. I went traveling for a few months to figure out what I wanted to do. Came back, needed to earn some money, and got a job as a kind of conference assistant doing AV at a conference centre. So that was my kind of introduction to the AV industry. Found I quite enjoyed it because it's quite varied and you got to play with lots of technology. I've always quite liked technology. Used to play guitar in a band and different things like that. But yeah, really just stumbled into it by accident at the very beginning.
So the church that I had been around needed a tech director. So I went in one day and basically, had started dating a girl, got a fiance and basically a job in the same day. And just ended up turning my business down, closing it, and then becoming a tech director at one of the larger churches down here in Orange County. And it was then that while I was, overseeing that, and there was a big upgrade going on at that time, some new direction, and we were putting in a lot of new technologies, that I realized that when you're working in a church, your job is bigger than being AV. Because I would have a lot of volunteers who would work with me on the weekends, right? And then they would come to me and say, what did the pastor mean by X, Y, Z? And I was thinking, oh, that's the pastor.
No, I'm just the same guy.
But that's what made me recognize that, wow, I have a job with a purpose now. Mm-hmm. And the purpose isn't just a paycheck.
Well, at the time when I was going to college, the first time I was torn. I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a teacher. And then I switched over to sports medicine. Mm-hmm. And then obviously I did neither of those. And then when I went back to school the second time to get my bachelor's, I focused on getting a degree in organizational leadership because I figured whatever I did then that would kind of, run the gamut. So it's still not quite AV or technology focused, but I figured that degree would serve me better. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I didn't know that AV was really a job or an industry because I don't recall my high school having like an AV club. Like a lot of people say their high schools had that, and we didn't have it, so I wasn't aware. And we still had blackboards and overhead, projectors that they would bring in on the carts. So I knew what AV was, but not to what it is, currently.
I did the first ever. I did the original CTS when it came to the UK, which was InfoComm back then. I did CTSD, the first course in the UK, and failed, actually, interestingly. In hindsight, probably took that a little bit too early in my career. But generally, as opportunities arose at kind of Warwick, I'd take any training, whether it was manufacturer training, hands-on. But I guess the vast amount of experience I gained was actually on the job, working with technicians and colleagues, and just getting stuck in.
From the university, really, before then it was just sort of learn on the job type stuff, and then once at the university, I got a good manager, Adam Harvey, who's sort of quite keen, and he's sort of got me through some of the Avixa courses, and then that was sort of leading up to the CTS.
And you've completed your CTS, haven't you?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So what's next on the? Are you going to aim for D or I with the CTS?
Well, there's a possibility of going towards the I, but
wait and see. It's very hard when you have a small family and you say, yeah, I'm going to do this and then you open up the book and go, actually, maybe that was a bad idea. I'll just park it over there underneath my coffee cup for a week long.
I am Chuck Espinosa, the Mad Sound Guy. I am a senior staff instructor here at Avixa. And the way I got into this, it's kind of the crooked road. When I was in high school, I was a musician, and that was the thing that I liked to do. And as well as being a musician, I wanted to be a on-the-road musician. So I took a bit of advice from somebody that said, if you want to do it, do it. So I went on the road. I joined at a very young age. I joined the Musicians Union. I was 15 and a performing musician in the union. I put in for a spot to do cable rolling and just basic, stagehand stuff at 15. Couldn't do a lot because I was still underage, but I did what I could, and I learned a lot in the summers. Went on tours and whatnot, and learned the proper way to roll a cable. Learned what that cable plugs into, and that was step one. When I left high school, I was not going to college. I was very poor, and my family was a lot of military people, and the big thing was join the military. And it was also the time of Desert Shield and Desert Storm, so there was always that calling of your father was in the military, your grandfather was in the military, your uncles were in the military. It's a thing to do, so I did. And what I didn't know was when you get there, they ask you a bunch of questions and they keep you up real late. In the Marine Corps, they really try and run you through the paces. And they asked me if I played an instrument, and I said yes. So they halfway through boot camp, I go down and audition, and they came and said, hey, you know what? That you're great that you want to help out your country and your nation, but you could play music. You have a gift that not everybody has, and you could motivate people. And in the Marine Corps, you still have to go out to the field and do all this stuff that the infantry Marines do. You have to go on deployment, et cetera, et cetera. I think in the Marine Corps now, it's actually a mandatory thing that you have to do a deployment once every 4 years at the very minimum. So got into the Marine band, went through the school, came out, went to my band, and I was playing guitar in the rock band. And in the Marine Corps, what they did with the audio engineer is they picked somebody who wasn't in the rock band. So they got like a clarinet player, a French horn player at the time, and they put him behind the console and said, run it. And that would be like taking anyone off the street and putting them behind a console and saying, go.
Yeah. And not only that, Chuck, we know as AV folk, you get a clarinet player behind a mixing desk. They don't know how to balance out the bass drum or something like that on a mixing desk.
Yeah, well, not if they haven't been trained. If you haven't been trained at anything, like if you could put me on a underneath a Ferrari, and I'm a pretty good mechanic. I work on my Hummer all the time, but I don't know a feather duster from a duck's butt when it comes to a Ferrari, right? So I would mess it all up. I'd be like, I don't know. Yeah. So I respectfully asked the sergeant that was behind the console, I've had a little bit of training. Do you mind if I tune that up? And he said, please do. That was the beginning of me never playing again because they found out that I had knowledge of live sound, of electrical, of recording, stuff like that. That was very much needed. So I kept doing that and going from band to band and doing sound and training sound techs. And when I got to Quantico, they said, do you want to train sound guys? And I said, yes, I do. So they gave me a little school. At the same time, I was also a marksmanship instructor. They found out that I could shoot really well. And I went through instructor training, just any basic instructor training, you know, how to present, et cetera, et cetera. And so I put the two together. So I spent part of my time as a marksmanship instructor, training Marines how to shoot, part-time training sound guys and going on the road with the band, doing recordings. After that, got out of the Marine Corps. You know, they found out that it's cheaper to make sound guys or get sound guys out of the house. So they wanted to try that for a little bit. I talked to a lot of guys now, and they ended up making part of it at the School of Music, where we go to basic training for the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. Basic musician training. There's classes now for sound guys. So it kind of took off, especially for the Marine Corps. Got out and didn't know what I was going to do. I could shoot and do sound. So started doing live sound for bands around and traveling around. And at one point in time, my now ex-wife said, you know, you got to get a real job. You just can't be a sound guy your whole life. We need insurance. You need a 401k, et cetera.
That's a great line that we're going to use as a quote in this podcast. You can't get a real job. Sound technician is not a real job.
Yeah, little did I know, right? So, I mean, I thought it was a real job. I had a lot of fun doing it and made good money. Although I worked Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday morning. And like the rest of it was just having fun, getting gear together and building racks. I didn't think that was work. That was actually just fun. Yeah. Don't tell anybody that now, though, because they won't pay me for that anymore. It doesn't matter what you do in AV, in anything, in life. Give it your all. Do it to the best of your ability. If you're going to shovel poop in a horse stable, be the best poop shoveler there is. If you're going to clean toilets, be the best toilet cleaner. If you're going to build rocket ships, be the best rocket ship builder there is. Bricklayer, cement pourer, carpenter. Study and not just brag on the things you did. Figure out what you could do better every single day, because we have a short lifetime on this earth. So if you're going to do something, do it to the best of your ability. And that includes if you're going to be a good husband, if you're going to be a good father, if you're going to be a good policeman, do it. And there's going to be times when you're going to have to be a father and a husband and a worker all at the same time. You know what? Give your all. Give 100% to everything, because your kids will remember the 5 minutes that you spent with them giving 100%. And your wife will remember the 2 hours that you spent with her giving 100%. And your job will remember this, however much time you spent giving 100%.
I'm sure it made worldwide coverage that London Heathrow and London Gatwick Airport were closed down while drones were spotted close to planes rather, in the sky, and the whole airport just after Christmas went into complete and utter shutdown with no planes flying. Simon, do you think this type of stuff could happen in Ireland?
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
I think our Irish airports are probably even less secure from that point of view compared to the UK, because Ireland is seen as not a biggest target for terrorism and all like that. But I know that in the UK they introduced lots of technology of like jammers and radio jammers and all like that around the airports, just to try and get the drone down. And then to find out who it was. So, but saying that, Ireland is probably a lot more technology in that field than we realize. I heard a long time back that like the Irish Army are one of the leaders in communications in Europe. when it comes to that kind of technology. So you never know. Ireland might have better technology in place. We just don't realise it.
Jack, thank you for joining us. It's a very hot topic at the moment, and I say you're out the door with requests for training.
Yeah, it's definitely been busy over the last couple of months, especially after all the incidents there in UK. But generally, over the time, we always had a lot of students, and it's been kind of busy always. So that's been always good for us.
Yeah. Now, talking about the incidents, how did it happen? Like we did say that, like, can they not make drones so that if they enter airport areas, that it immediately sends an alert back to the pilot or the drone owner and said, hold on, you are flying into air restricted spaces, we're not allowed to go there?
Well, the technology already there from majority of the flight control software, say for the DJI or any of these kind of brands, Unique, there's geofencing already in place. So what happens is, as soon as you try to take off in a restricted zone or an area, you know, where there's very limitations set, then you can take off. And if you were to come to an area, it will actually stop flying into.
Okay.
So it's already there. You know, it's if you're a professional operator and you have your license and all that stuff like this, then you can, you know, fly in these areas. You can circumvent the software to go past it.
So that's maybe what happened over in Gatwick and what happened over in Heathrow, that someone went past the geo fence. And is it without saying hack the system, is it easy to turn off the geofencing on these DJI devices?
Well, drones are not just straightforward one brand kind of, you know, majority of people fly with one or two brands. There's one big brand from, it's called DJI.
Okay.
Now, it's the easiest ones to pick up. You can pick it up at so many stores. You know, there's many hobby stores, even big retailers starting to sell all these kind of drones. And they're the easiest ones. You can fly them literally by a press of a button. Now, these ones generally have all the restrictions in place and all the stuff like this. But there's so many other brands that you can buy that does not have these restrictions set in. You know, so it's potentially for somebody coming and want to cause a hazard. You know, they're out to cause harm. Nothing's going to stop them, you know.
This is true.
Yeah, so I mean, like, we have a very good, you know, base of professional operators here, and even the recreational users. They're doing, you know, they know the rules and they know not to fly near airports and all this stuff like this. So these are not really the people to worry about. You know, like even normally people that would buy the drones, would buy the kind of ones from more reputable brands, or, you know, most of the cases, and there will be geofence. But I think common sense, you know, is pretty good here so far. So there's no incidents like this.
Being, I suppose, being a pilot and being into aviation, you're into all sorts of aviation things. And growing up, I guess I would have, you know, read aviation magazines and was interested in model aircraft and flew model aircraft, flew them as well as built them, sorry. And just naturally then, as drones came out, I was always interested in technology, always interested in flying, and now drones were up and running, and I got into drones. I was able to combine the kind of aviation experience then with my kind of passion for flying these little model aircraft and drones, and create what ultimately became Safe Drone. I started off originally just doing kind of flying drones for businesses that needed this new aspect that drone video and photography could bring to their businesses. I had a bit of skill, I had a bit of knowledge, and got into just doing aerial video and aerial photography, and got into modeling and 3D surveying. And as you could do more and more drones, I did more and more with the drones that I could do. But I always had that background in aviation, and I was an instructor pilot as well, so I had that instructional knowledge and background. And the Irish Aviation Authority knew about me, and they approached me to see if I could do some flight tests for them initially.
Right.
They have a flight test, they have a syllabus of training to get your permit, and I became what's referred to as a flight test examiner with them, and then got into a bit of instructing with an old school called ORPAS Training International, ORPAS being remotely piloted aircraft systems, and then branched out on my own to create kind of Safe Drone. And I brought in a partner then, Theodore Prince, ultimately to help me, because it got very, very busy, you know.
I can imagine so, because it is getting, now I've seen a lot from my audiovisual background. I go over to Integrated Systems Europe, ISE in Amsterdam. You see these massive drones that maybe are 20, 30,000 euro, that they can fly 3 or 4 kilometers away. And it then the likes of some of the drone companies over in America and across Europe, they're saying, okay, you need to go off and get a license. Now, I see on your page, you're a member of the European Aviation Safety Agency, who has created, as I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 2017, this act to say that it's across Europe now, you have to have a drone license if you're going to have a drone up in the air.
Yeah, well, the European Aviation Safety Agency is basically in the Irish Aviation Authority regulates aviation matters in this country.
Okay.
And the European body that does the equivalent, it would be EASA, the European Aviation Safety Agency. So anywhere that EASA don't regulate, the national authorities must regulate. Okay. Currently, the EASA didn't have, the European regulator didn't have regulations for drones below 150 kgs. So the Irish Aviation Authority had to fill that gap. Okay. But last year in September of 2018, as it is now, the piece of regulation that created EASA, the European Aviation Safety Agency, was updated. That gave them a new mandate, that gave EASA a mandate then to regulate drones below 150 kgs. Okay. And that, as I said, that piece of regulation is now in place in September, and they now have the mandate to regulate drones, but they haven't yet brought out their regulation, which we're expecting possibly as early as April 2019, but certainly within the year of 2019. Now, it's not something that they've just started working on since last September, because they had the mandate. They've known for a long time they're going to get this mandate as far back as 2014. Wow. And they've been working on various notices of proposed amendments that they put out to industry and within Europe. So there's been a lot of consultation with industry and with the players in the European market. So the regulation for drones is pretty much set. It's just a matter of getting it actually out and signed off as a legal piece of documentation, you know. So currently we run a 2-day ground school. Okay. We run it every month. Sometimes we run it twice a month. We do weekend courses, we do midweek courses. It's 2 days with us, 2 full days, 14 hours nearly each day. 14 hours of lecture over the 2 days. And once you've got 2 days of training done, you go away, you do a little bit of preparation for your flight test, pass the flight test, and we'll stamp and sign all your paperwork. You then make a personal application to the Aviation Authority, who will then issue your permit. And then your permit allows you to do the things that the regulation doesn't allow you to. I said to you earlier on, like visual line of sight, you must maintain visual line of sight with your drone, okay? Now, if you want to operate beyond visual line of sight, there's no permit. The permit doesn't give you beyond visual line of sight permission, okay? So you can't ordinarily do that. And that's an area, that's an example of an area that, say that was something you wanted to do, that you would then approach the Aviation Authority and go, look, I want to do this beyond visual line of sight operation. I won't be able to see the drone. I've done my risk assessment. These are all my mitigating actions. Do you think this is okay? And they may or may not stamp and approve that particular flight.
And today we're talking with Stephen Ashby. Stephen is the Technology Manager of Operations at Involved Visual Collaboration, based in Kent in the United Kingdom. It was Steve's birthday, and he had some weird and wonderful birthday presents from his kids. I have been sworn to secrecy on what presents he got, but if someone was to pop a beer in front of myself and Steve off mic, We probably won't tell you the story. How did you get involved in the world of audiovisual?
By mistake.
By mistake. Great answer. Moving on. Next question. No, go on. Tell us the.
No, I was 16. I broke my arm sort of quite severely in my GCSE years at school. It took about a year in total for it to heal. Several operations and whatnot. So all took me, my grades sort of slipped. I was a massive IT buff and I wanted to go into IT. But of course I wanted to go on college. Didn't have the grades in the end to get on. The grades were okay, but they weren't the A's for the advanced course that I wanted. So subsequently, the course I went on, the next level was the first week was learning how to turn on and off a PC, and I was sort of like, can't be doing this. So I sort of slipped into a way of doing working at Woolworths back in the day. And I was sort of skipping college to go work at Woolworths until one day the college phoned up and said, look, maybe best, spoke to my mom, that's what they did in those days, and said maybe be best suited in a work-based training scheme. And my mum sort of went, yeah, okay, where? And I went, well, we've got two choices. There's an apprenticeship in which you'll receive about £100 a week, working for a car rental company doing IT, or there's Warwick University.
All right.
But it's £50 a week. And Mum turned around and went, you'll go to Warwick University. I was like, yeah, thanks for that. And thinking at that age, 16, you're like, well, I want the extra 50 quid a week.
Yeah.
But no, it's one of the best things she's ever done for me. You know, one of the best things she ever did for me. And I went along thinking I was going to work for IT services, and it was audiovisual services.
Oh, super.
And the story started there.
For anyone that's new and coming into the AV industry, what road would you tell them to take?
It's a real difficult one, because I think there'll be somebody in every single area of AV that will tell you, no, that's going to die. That's dead horse. And to be honest with you, at the moment, I'd say follow your passion, follow what interests you, ask questions, always ask questions. Don't be afraid to learn from your mistakes. I don't think there's any of us that have learned by not making mistakes. However, try and just limit them to the once. And just be open to the fact that it can be a brutal industry. You've got to commit to it. And if you don't commit to it, then unfortunately it's probably not the career for you, because you're not going to get anywhere easily. But ultimately the rewards are worth it, and it's a great, when you look at your customers, and again with Involve, that's been a real passion of mine, our customers, and you see what the difference you make. Then you know you're doing the right thing, you made the right decision.
I haven't always done this. Let's start with saying that I've not really done AV for my entire working career. When I first started, I worked for British Steel. I was out in industry.
Oh wow! So that is a different one. Now, the one that I'm looking forward to doing, I have to say to all our listeners, is Mark Coxson, aka AV. He used to be a vet, and he studied veterinary. So we're going to get Mark on in the next week or two to tell us how he went from veterinary into the world of audiovisual. I think no one beats that story.
That's going to be really different. So yeah, that's going to be very, very interesting.
You went from Steel, okay?
Yeah, so I was the British Steel. They don't do this anymore, but I was a British Steel engineering placement student.
Okay.
When I started, so I actually started in mechanical.
Okay.
So, when I first started training, I was looking after huge motors, so and looking after the internals of great big motors through all the engineering departments in British Steel, and ended up in. So I ended up in the right place at the right time, just as they were getting their IT service going.
Okay.
So I ended up looking after and putting in all the network infrastructure in all the buildings.
Okay, right.
And I gradually drifted it. And then I went and set up a conference center for British Steel. I ended up being, well, you do some techie things, make this thing go. and that's how I ended up in AV. So,
right. So, and how many years, or are you going to tell us how many years ago that was?
Oh my God! I started in British Steel in 1991.
Right.
So,
yeah, not that long ago, says the guy that like thinks that 1991 was two years ago.
yeah, no, in IT terms, it was a lifetime away. When I first started doing it, the data logging that we used in British Steel was actually done on ArcNet.
Wow.
It was that old. We used ArcNet for token ring type architecture. So I put the first piece of fiber in an industrial setting in the whole of Wales.
No, I didn't work as a vet, but I was going to school to become a veterinarian. Yes, that was my goal at some point.
Okay, lead me through this.
So it was interesting because I always wanted to be a veterinarian since I was a kid, right? So, and when I went to school, I was in this interesting quandary in that Arizona doesn't have veterinary schools,
right?
And so when I went to college, they said, well, you can go to agribusiness, or you can go to biomedical engineering, and those would be your two paths to do pre-vet here in Arizona. And so I chose biomedical engineering at first. So I actually started out in that core, which is crazy, and doing like all sorts of weird math like Diffie-Q and numeric equations and linear algebra, which is negative space and black hole. It's like Star Trek kids are in the class. That's like what it is, right? It's just a bunch of
okay. And like had you that interest in like your young teenage years of all that? Were you the nerdy kid at the back of the room, or at the front of the room rather?
You know, I was always really great at school, and I loved like anatomy, and I deer hunted as a kid and all those things. So it's kind of my own person. I wasn't really a geek at the back. The weird part about me is I didn't take apart, radios, and I wasn't playing with computers, and I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. So I wasn't doing programming and things like that as a kid. I was Thai boxing, so I was doing Muay Thai kickboxing. I was deer hunting with my dad. I was working on a ranch with my friends. Because in order to be
End of Teens has been since you were a kid.
So, yeah, I started that when I was 17.
Wow. Okay.
So that's been a while, but yeah, I mean, a lot of my time was actually spent working on a ranch because I wanted to be a veterinarian in a zoo. And in order to be a veterinarian in a zoo, it's very hard to get that position, and they want husbandry experience because zoos all have breeding programs.
Right.
Zoos are all about reintroducing species to the wild, or repopulating things, or helping endangered species get back on their feet. And so they wanted people that had been involved in those things. And so that's why I worked on a ranch and pulled calves and all those kind of things, so that I could get some experience in the real world with delivering babies and breeding animals and things like that. So I think we're at a point as an industry where if you're a smart young person willing to work hard, I don't think it matters, I don't think color, sex, any of that stuff matters anymore in this world. And I think if you want an open door, if you get into some of those communities where there are like-minded people like that, I really feel like Chris's AV and the AM community. I feel like the audiovisual industry professionals group, there's a couple out there. I feel like those are places where people are hoping to connect people.
Let me see, I was 19. My dad was on the property committee for his church, and he was overseeing getting a new PA system installed. So a local Edinburgh company called Northern Lights, which a fair few folk will have heard of, I'm sure, because they were quite a big company in their day. One of their project engineers was leading that one, so my dad asked them, do you have any jobs going for a guy who's wasting his life working for B&Q? So I got a name to write away to. I wrote off and didn't hear back for about 6 months, and eventually they were at a point of where they were recruiting technicians. So I went down for an interview and a little soldering test, and then that was me. So that was my upbringing into the industry, was in a good size integrator. And I think the opportunity for you to see lots of different aspects of the industry from a technology perspective is a pretty good chance. And to deal, you'll be dealing with clients and that kind of thing, so you get that relationship building and stuff with different clients, and return custom and stuff like that. I think it stood me in fairly good stead, so I would suggest that's not a bad shout for someone else.
This is the All Things TechIE podcast, episode 21, the most crazy podcast and most live people in our podcast that we've ever had, because we are talking all about the topic of working remotely. And so if we're going to actually say that if anyone has any babies that walk into the room, toddlers, pets that walk into the room, that is perfectly and utterly allowed, because we are demonstrating that, number one, working remotely is so much fun. Number two, it is that working remotely is sporadic, and we've seen the clip of the British sports. Oh, of course, even Chris ringing a bell there in the background as well. But it's also, we've seen the clips of the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, and even on live news television where kids have been pulled out of, and even that's my back door, and there's my 4-month-old baby being introduced to the podcast. Look,
I love the mohawk. That is adorable.
I know, yeah, exactly. It's just like the hair isn't even growing at the moment. But and then my other toddler son, thankfully, is asleep at the moment. But he did join Daddy this morning when we are in lockdown. As of recording this podcast, all higher ed, all primary schools, all secondary schools, all museums in Ireland are in shutdown mode. Apart from, this is the interesting thing, because it's Great Britain, and Noel will give me some comments on this in a minute. Yep. No, you're not in lockdown, and neither is Northern Ireland. So, if you are sitting on the border of Northern Ireland, and your kids could be in the south going to school and they could be off, but yeah, you're still working if you're in the Northern Ireland at the moment. But no, why isn't England following suit to Ireland?
We know we stand on our own feet, right? So we'll make the right decision a few months after everybody else has made the right decision, and we'll just get it all sorted. So seriously, at the moment, it is quite a bit of panic over here. There's a lot going on. Everybody's worried about it. Nobody really knows what's going on. Nobody knows the proper answer. There's all the social media stuff that's telling you everybody's going to get it and it's all going to end. You've got to get a load of toilet paper. And pasta.
It's out of stock. You would want to see the shops yesterday. So I literally was actually working remotely yesterday for half the day, and then the news came out from our Irish government and our Taoiseach, as we call him. Well, he's over in America. I love that. He was supposed to be over to give Trump a bowl of shamrock, and the only reason he went over to America is to give him a bowl of shamrock, and it doesn't actually happen. It's yeah, cheers for that, guys. Thanks for costing us a couple of extra million when we're going to be in a recession probably because of this COVID-19. But
Justin, don't make me prove you wrong again. It's not going away in a week.
Politicians here, I'm telling you, we don't have sports anymore. Sports is pretty much canceled. So somebody's got to, take up the comedy bit and occupy our time. So that's what we got politicians for. My son, when he was 3, he was young. He was about 3 because my daughter had just been born. We made the mistake of letting him play at one of those. We were in a clothing store for kids, and they had a Lego setup or whatever, and he played, and we did not pay attention to what he was doing. 2 days later, he's in the we basically had to take him to the hospital with the rotavirus.
Oh my God.
Rotavirus, but this was before the shot. He was still young. And of course, the next year they came with it. And rotavirus is pretty much, it's nothing is staying inside. Everything's coming out like liquid. At one point, and my wife thinks I'm nuts. I did not know what to do. I'm like, diapers can't hold this. I blue tarped my, a painter's tarp, right? I rolled a plastic tarp out on the living room. I sat him down. I'm like, if there's a leak, we should be okay.
I think I can get some traction on a bumper sticker for my generation that says, been prepping for this since Y2K.
You got the improved data speeds at home, which allow a lot of us to come home. You got better software and codec that allows, this call here could not really happen a handful of years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
You got 5 people on a call without some sort of MCU attached to it, and not the Marvel, cinematic universe. For the people that may not be familiar with our jargon, MCU is a bridge.
Music.
Just want to clarify that. Thank you for some enlightening horror music.
Sorry.
I may go make it. Don't play that, dude. I may go set my microwave and or make a sandwich while I wait for that thing to connect.
Yeah,
it's like an automatic. That's like the Pavlovian type of trigger for us older folks or Gen Xers. You hear that go, and you automatically run to make a sandwich because you're not connecting to the internet.
Chris, let's just even add to that and just go. At the moment, every kid in Ireland Southern Ireland anyways, is at home. And they're not allowed outside the house for most of the parents unless they're going to toy shops like we discussed. But they're on their PlayStation 4s, they're on their Xboxes, they're going to be bringing down the internet. Really stir the pot here, guys. Why has none of these tech fests been made virtual? Hello, we have so many virtual environments.
Hey, wait a minute here. Wait a minute.
I know one, yeah.
I know one that has that was virtual before it was cool.
Yeah, but Joe, you're cheap.
Isn't there a special edition coming up? Yeah.
Yeah, we have a special edition Monday, 11 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing that. Yeah. But no, joking aside, like you look at so many different press conferences and whatever, and you just say, why aren't all these things done online? Why can't people show us tech online?
So, it's not as easy as you say, though. I mean, right? You say, why haven't they gone online? There's a lot of prep to that. Sure, could you actually run
Spain with it?
I just kind of want to hear the family thing go.
I actually also want to find out what Adam's doing with his family at the moment. That's cool.
I'm just waiting.
No, but I think that if you say that, but it's not easy to take all those vendors and say, now take what you've been planning and you've spent a lot of money thinking about how you want your booth experience, and now just bring it online.
That's true.
Yes, it's possible, but not in the same way, right? And as opposed to, just doing some type of product release video or, a white paper, that's very different. So while it says, yes, can we just throw them online? You could, but what kind of impact, and is that really what the company wants as, their messaging and their branding? They're going to be better off doing something themselves. Like I said on AV in the AM, if you have a little CrestCon or an XCron, they can do their own thing if they need to, should, for whenever, InfoComm ends up being held, and if it's pushed back or whatever, or
well, you know what we miss out on? We miss out on all the networking and all the drinking. That's and all the food. That's the biggest thing that we would, and the swag. Don't forget
And the continuing education. It's all about the continuing education.
Continuing education. That's it. Yeah.
Here's the real thing. I booked my anniversary vacation this year in November, Mr. Dawson, to Ireland with my wife. So will I be able to go have a beer with the former AV Nation winner?
Technically information. Chris will back me up on this. We can't go for an award after winning it. Can we, Chris? No.
You got three of us here now.
I know, all 3 of them on one call.
And we're not on AV Nation's podcast. What kind of
travesty is that? I love when y'all humble brag. Y'all are so cute.
Has the most amount of trophies that he needs to build a second shelf at home.
Well, man,
tell us about your day. You're over in England. Any news of schools closures or anything like that?
I mean, pardon my expression, people are losing their shit over here. Literally.
Where are you?
I'm actually on the school run right now. Ironic enough, I'm sat in the car. I have my stepdaughter at home. She's been at home all day. So, schools are talking about closures. I heard a nurse earlier saying to another mum that apparently in West Sussex, which is the county I live in, apparently there's been 60 unreported cases of fevers in secondary schools that haven't been dealt with.
Now people
Yeah,
are
we'll
losing
see.
their
That with
shit
a
over
grain of
that.
salt.
Yeah.
That's the problem I had yesterday, and Lysoled the crap out of my kids when they walked in. You know,
Yeah.
And it was because
It's crazy.
rumors and all that is also kind of crazy. So,
Mike Slammer, hello, welcome to the show.
This is awesome. I saw the little Zoom thing that was posted on Twitter and thought it was cool to see everybody in real time for a change.
Now that's a cool background, Mike.
Sharing, guys.
Yeah. Now, Mike, has things gone into lockdown where you are?
Sure. So for those who don't know, I'm one of the AV engineer leads for Discovery Channel. And we just got a notification that it's official. Our building is going to be shut down through March, the rest of
Where are
March.
y'all located? Where's Discovery Channel located?
We are global, so all offices are going to be closed.
All offices. Okay. Wow.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Of that, does that mean that there's the doors are shut, or can you guys I was a former end user tech manager for many years, so when the company closed, it was an opening for me to go, you know what, I'm going to get into all these rooms, reboot all the codecs, do some quick updates, do some updates. Hey, the boardroom is finally going to be available. Do you have access to spaces, or you're talking everything's getting shut down, they're spraying everything, they're bubble wrapping it, and we'll go back in a couple of weeks?
That is a great point. There's still a lot of questions surrounding what it will mean for business critical users. Right now, because we do also, we're TV, we have TV channels and broadcast to manage, anyone, on the broadcast teams are still, expected to be staggering. The IT and the AV teams respectively are staggering our office hours. So if there is something mission critical that we need to be on site for, the expectation is please be on site and handle it. Other than that, though, the directive from our leadership is don't worry about it, just stay safe.
Graham, where are you driving to, man?
I'm actually going to go and rescue my father-in-law who's broken down.
Oh shit!
I just literally connected on my computer. My wife's like, "Can you go pick my dad up?" I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, he's broken down. I was like, "I literally am just joining a Zoom call, babe." She's like, "I'll do it from the car. That's fine."
I love it. I love it. This is why we do this podcast, because we don't know what's going to happen next. And last time we had Graham in the car collecting his kids. This time we have Graham.
Hey, Justin, not to disappoint. Justin, not to disappoint. Also to keep the tradition. Say hi, Penelope.
Hi.
You're not going to say hi to Justin.
Oh. Okay, Jason, what is happening over in England with you guys? School's closing tomorrow, I believe, but some have already started closing. Have you got your kids at home at the moment?
No.
No. Do you want to have them at home at the moment?
No, the government decisions to close them on Friday. Schools have closed of their own accord when they ran out of staff via self-isolation. And then some parents started homeschooling before that. I'm just enjoying the peace and quiet before.
Just calm before the storm.
It is.
Calm before the storm, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, well, I tell you what we've been doing today. I have been working. I better just put out a disclaimer today to all my my colleagues in UCD that I have actually been working. Okay, but my wife decides to take an aerobics class. Everyone with 2 meters apart. I'm telling you guys, I'm living on a street that has about 50 plus kids on it, and all the parents are keeping their children apart. Now inside the house, fine, but these children, it was like they've seen daylight for the first time in over a week nearly. They're all out, they're all nearly rubbing their eyes, and then we actually drew in chalk 2 meters apart so they could do their little aerobics class. But it went down great, and you know what? All the parents started joining in. Why? Because they wanted to get their kids out of the house. It was a bit of a break away from, work remotely. But it's good and it's bad. My sister had, my brother-in-law is working 12-hour shifts for our city council at the moment. So he's not seeing his children. She has 3 children, one a toddler, the other 2 a primary school age. and she has to make her utility room her office. And people are just being sent home, at least with the techie folk, people are just being sent home with computers. Go on, connect that to your internet and
figure it out.
And figure it out. It's a disaster, guys.
I like the person that set up their home office on an ironing board. I was like, oh, that's great, man. Yeah. What is it? Necessity, the mother of invention.
I'm telling you, there's going to be some great photos coming out from different places, and hopefully on this podcast, and we probably have to start up a hashtag for this, like just see what people's offices are all about. Has anyone found any hashtags going on about this?
I don't know the hashtag, but I've seen some because I saw a whole thread. I like the people that have those antique liquor cabinets. They're converting those into desks, which looks really pretty with all the booze right in front of you and then the laptop in front.
Is InfoComm going to go ahead? The man in the know, Tim, probably knows the answer to this.
You think he's going to break it?
As of right now, I mean, if I knew, I would tell you. As of right now, it is. That's the thing is, in my opinion, InfoComm and Avixa, the folks that run it, they have until about 4 or 5 weeks out if you use the standard of NAB. And I would argue that NAB is a bigger show just from a standpoint, right?
Yeah, it's as big as IC.
Yeah. NAB canceled 4 weeks out. All right. So if that's the standard of the size, a show of that size, they canceled 4 weeks out. Now, some exhibitors they ship things out a couple of weeks before that. So if they want to be nice to their exhibitors and conscious of that, it's going to be the end of April is when they start shipping things out. So about 8 weeks. So you're looking at the end of April before if they're going to postpone it, that's when they would say.
Okay.
But they're not being coy, Justin. This is all about negotiating with the convention center, right? They need leverage, and we were having a virtual happy hour the other day with a bunch of lifers, and Kim Frank, who is with Geopath, they do the digital out of home convention. She had to cancel theirs in Phoenix, Arizona. And it cost them about $600,000, and that's a dramatically smaller conference than something the size and scale of InfoComm.
Well, it's been interesting. We've seen a nearly 6,000% increase in team views in the last week.
Right. Wow.
So it's hugely risen just in the last week. But yeah, we're pretty much running remote. So it's been an interesting learning curve for quite a lot of us to get into quite quickly. But yeah, we're pretty much running.
Now, at least you understand this little nugget of GDPR and IT security. Are we going to be slammed with something from the GDPR police in a couple of months' time?
Well, that really depends on whether or not you're doing any recordings using things like Teams, because you need to commission the meetings in the right way. So potentially, we're quite lucky we've turned them off.
Nice.
And we're only allowing certain people to be able to do it. But yeah, you may face that at some point in the future.
Mark, are you there?
I am.
Yeah.
How are you guys?
How are you guys? Is your kids at home? Are you homeschooling?
Yeah. Definitely homeschooling. Well, our kids are going to go online here this week. My oldest daughter went online yesterday. Their school went online yesterday. My other two, their school goes online on Monday. So.
What are the ages of yours, Mark? How old are your kids? I know one's a teenager.
Yeah. So my oldest is a junior in high school. She's 16. My son is 13. He's in 8th grade. And my youngest is in 5th grade. So 3 different schools, 2 different school districts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And are they ready? What are they going to start using? Like I'm hearing loads of different platforms across the states for different elementary schools and different age ranges. But what software are they going to start using? I've seen even secondary schools here using Instagram, and I'm thinking now that is definitely going to cause problems with the GDPR police.
Yeah, they're using a lot of different stuff. I mean, Google Classroom and Hangouts obviously is a big thing for the schools because they're already using Google Docs in the Google environment. So A lot of them have that, and especially, my youngest they're doing everything on Chromebooks. So
Do they get to
Google,
take those home, the Chromebooks, or no?
some of the schools have let them do that. Our kids didn't need to. Luckily, over the last couple of years, they've asked for computers for Christmas or birthdays or things, and so they all have laptops now, and so that has helped. I know even our churches stopped as well. So my daughter's on like a core team for church for confirmation and things like that, and they're doing Zoom meetings for church. So
I have to say, I'm a single mum, so I'm kind of thinking, generally they're saying that the kids are not going to present severe, and let's hope that it is the case that no one's children get so sick. But if I'm sick and I'm out of action, they can't get to where we are when we're not particularly close to many shops to get food, or and people are crazy. The shelves are literally empty of the most random things. So, well, I had just had my toilet roll delivered, so I'm kind of thinking, worst case scenario, I'm going to be selling it. So I'm not worried about the toilet rolls, but in terms of food and other things. But my eldest today actually had a bit of a dip, because he's now thinking, he's got a really good friendship group, and he's gone into school today, and he said, well, Mum, what if we can't actually meet? What if we can't actually see our friends if they do close the schools till September? And I'm kind of trying to rein in their mental health now, because the kids are actually, my kids are very upbeat and they don't take things seriously, but I can kind of see that they're starting to realize that they're going to be isolated. Mm-hmm. And that's just not their default setting.
My oldest, so he's in kindergarten, which is fine, and we do the homeschooling thing, and it's not bad. It's usually right around podcast time, or when I'm on Zoom conference calls, and all of a sudden it's like they want to make noise and hang out here, and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? Who's this person on the other end of the line? Hello.
Yeah.
You got something to give me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, starting off, how did you enter the world of audiovisual? Where did you study anything in college that led you to this path?
No, not really. So I mean, college-wise, like AV was not even a thought. I was planning to, well, I always wanted to join the military. My parents were like, "You're gonna be a pilot, if you're gonna do anything." And so I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott, Arizona, and started my degree off in aviation. It was called Aeronautical Sciences, and then 9/11 happened, and I was just, I particularly didn't see the market coming back anytime soon, nor did I particularly care for that pilot life, which is weird to a lot of people, but that was just not my thing. And I couldn't switch to an engineering degree because I had a scholarship at the time for a non-technical degree, and then ended up joining the Army instead. Sat in Air Force class that everybody said, or the professor said, no matter what you do in the service, everybody supports the boots on ground. So I switched over to the Army. Parents were pretty upset. I had about a little under 3 months of leave before I ended up hopping on a plane to Iraq, and that's when I started working for my dad for a little while. He was like, I need extra labor. I was like, cool. And then the guys, I fell in love with their passion for AV, and I was like, there's got to be something about this thing.
This was while you were in Iraq?
No. Right before Iraq, I had some time to kill, so I had leave, and then they're like, you can't take leave there, so do you want to take your leave early? I was like, heck yeah, let's do that. And then my dad was like, I got some extra time, or some extra labor needs, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll make some extra money.
So your dad is in the audiovisual industry as well? Yeah.
He owns a company in Hawaii.
Okay.
And then so yeah, it's I thought it was interesting. There's a guy, Scott Nishihara. He was one of my mentors when it came to installing. Incredibly talented installer, technician, and I wanted to get to that level, but again, AV wasn't in my thought, in my head yet as far as a career. And then I met my wife girlfriend then. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll try staying like in one place, and so just because if we were doing something serious, the infantry life is not a life to necessarily.
So it was all her fault, is what it was all your wife's fault. That we could just end the conversation now, that it was all your wife's fault for settling.
I mean, interesting few months, especially since we've been locked down here in Ireland. So lots of things have changed.
Lots of things have changed, right? And I've been kept tight-lipped while Simon has been away in the background, and people have been asking where Simon has disappeared to, and I just kept on saying he was busy. Well, he was busy, listeners. I wasn't lying, but it was your news to announce. So are you announcing it on this program? Well, you've announced it on LinkedIn, so I guess you are.
Yeah, so I have now joined the creative technology group of that are across the world, but especially Creative Technology Ireland, as part of their installation team, to help them install some amazing projects. So I'm really looking forward to it. I've already been there 3 weeks, and wow, I've seen more projects in 3 weeks than I've seen in the last 13, 15 years in my AV career. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I tell you, it was a weird feeling leaving a firm that after 15 years and doing it virtually.
Yeah, like you had your kind of going away party by Google Call, because hey, that's what they use. And it was like, yeah, kind of seeing everyone and everyone emailing. It was all email thanks versus the going around and giving everyone hugs and shakes. And it's even weird, like on a Friday, you shut down the computer. That's it. You wipe your work phone. That's it. And a courier turns up the next day, next Monday or Tuesday, collects it, and it's gone. That's it.
Yeah, well, the way you get like presents and stuff like that when you physically leave a firm, and thank you cards and everything. Did you just send people your Revolut account details and just go, yeah, Simon has requested €10 from each one of our employees?
I never thought of that, actually. That's quite a good use of Revolut. We should get a plug in there for Revolut.
Right, we're going to put a PayPal donation button on the bottom of this video for any of your former employees that you've helped over the past 15 years that want to donate to the Simon's Kitty Fund. But I have to remind all our listeners that Simon is usually the non-drinker, and I'm actually quite serious about this. I know I'm going to plug him right now. Joe Way, once upon a time on the Higher Education podcast, says he doesn't drink, and then the photos just came out on social media to say that well, what's this in your hand? But Simon, I think the only time I've seen you drinking was at ISE, a couple of cocktails. Simon didn't drink at my wedding as best man. He doesn't drink much anyways. So this whole idea of virtually leaving, there was no party really. I tried to say, right, Simon, hold up your can of Coke even when I cheers him when it finally was his last day in PwC and moving on to CT Ireland. But virtually again, because we haven't, Simon and I haven't even met up since early February even.
Yeah, I think it was about that since we've
Have we
actually been
met up this year, Simon?
I don't know. That's just it. It's been one of those kind of we talk so much, it might as well be in person.
To North County Dublin and Skerries. That took far too long to get here, simply because the first petrol station I went to, the petrol station was closed, so I had to go to a different petrol station in another area of North County Dublin called Balbriggan. Okay, so I'm going to switch the camera around here. You can see that this is North County Dublin in Skerries, and the sun is about to set. So 20 to 9 p.m. So I'm going to start my walk now. So let's get this walk on the road. And this is the same route that's used for Darkness into Light every year in North County Dublin and Skerries. People actually kayaking out there, which I could turn around the camera, I can't. But there's people kayaking out on the grounds of North County Dublin here at the moment, in Skerries. And look at that for a view. Yeah, look at that for a view. So gonna keep this walk up, get the 5k in. This actually passes by a lovely ice cream shop, and I think I'm gonna treat myself to ice cream afterwards if this place is open. Just want to give you the sunset again. place. Look at that first sunset. Look at that first sun. As my mobile phone battery reaches the last 7 to 6%, we're coming up to the final kilometre walk along by the coast, and I'm gonna just switch over, let you see the views, and finish off the 1K with you guys in a silent, reflective type of way that I would usually do for darkness into light, because this view, I hope you all agree, it's quite stunning. Might not beat Vegas with all the lights, but I'll give you some of a sunset and the beaches of North County Dublin and Skerries. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget you can subscribe to the All Things TechIE podcast by visiting www.allthingstech.ie. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Justin or Dawson, and all the details on the bottom of your screen. So coming up in episode 30, earlier on today I caught up with the guys, the ones that were on a program earlier in the year, back in March, where we started talking about COVID-19, believing that it was going to be something that maybe would close down the country for about 2 weeks. How wrong were we? How wrong were we? Okay, maybe there were some people on that panel that said, no, Justin, this is going to go on for some time, like Joe Way and other people. And as the countries, plural, start reopening again, we ask what's in store for AV, what's in store for conferences, schools reopening, holiday plans, and more. It's the All Things TechIE podcast, episode 30. Is it mandatory to wear a face mask now on public transport in England?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And is anyone
since the 15th of July? Sorry, 15th of June.
Enforcing it? Is anyone
It's mandatory in Texas now.
Right, okay. What about creches? Is creches reopened for you guys? Are schools reopened? Have you got rid of the kids?
Got rid of one of them. My 5-year-old's back to school now because he's in reception, so he's been back for about 3 weeks. The nursery my little one goes to, that only just reopened, but because I think my little boy, he finishes in 2 weeks' time, so we just thought I might as well just wait till September to send her back. But it's been quite nice. It's been hard work, but it's been nice having them around, really.
We are not all online, regardless of what the press would like to say. We are majority online, but we have a number of courses that will still be held on campus in some form or fashion. But the students are coming back. We are encouraging people to, do what you can remote just for safety's sake. But the campus is open. We're upgrading 300 and some spaces. We're already in a phase 2, which is a little scary, of our upgrades. So, but no, it's exciting. We'll sleep at some point.
Now, Integrated Systems Europe began life in 2004 with the first edition of the show being held in Geneva in Switzerland. It hosted 120 exhibitors and attracted 3,500 visitors. Most importantly, it laid the foundation for unprecedented growth for the annual show over the years. Fast forward 16 years and ISE 2020 attracted more than 1,300 exhibitors and over 116,000 visits to its final edition in the RAI in Amsterdam. Now, I have been at the RAI in Amsterdam a couple of times. And now, of course, the RAI in Amsterdam in the final year of ISE, COVID-19 was just starting and the pandemic was just hitting the waves. ISE 2020 did go ahead. It really got hit more by the weather than anything else. So we're now in a world where a lot of these conferences have been taking place virtually. We talk about InfoComm that took place virtually. We talk about the AVIT Summit that happened last week that took place virtually. CES 2021, that's all going virtually. So what hopes lie in store for ISE in 2021 in its new home in Barcelona? I caught up with the Managing Director of Integrated Systems Europe, Mike Blackman, and he told me more. Check it out. Yeah.
So a little really quick brief background on my career. I started off in publishing with Financial Times and then with Personal Computer World magazine. And that dragged me into, I got headhunted to go and run the Personal Computer World show in London. I grew that to become the largest attended computer show in the UK, probably in Europe. No, CeBIT was always bigger. And then I got headhunted by IDG to come to Germany and launch a series of computer shows for them, including Macworld Expo, which I launched all over Europe. And then I left them and I started my own consulting business. And then I was headhunted again. You know, my old boss at IDG approached me and said, look, I've got 3 associations then who want to launch a new show in Europe. And he said, Mike, this job is made for you. So I said, okay, send me the info. And he sent it. I had a look at it. I said, well, this looks interesting. I think this could be successful. And I had an interview, and the 3 executive directors said, yeah, we want you. When can you start? And so we started, we launched the company in, that was April 2003. And we ran the first show in February or January rather, 2004. Wow. So, you know, that was how it all started. My background has always been computers and communications. So I've been a tech person and a bit of a techie, and I love technology. So actually coming to something like this was really, really, you know, made for me. And I remember the first show I went to was in this particular sector was InfoComm in the US, and I remember walking around that show like a little kid in a toy store, you know, just seeing all this wonderful stuff and saying, wow. So the preparation for ISE 2021 actually started much earlier because we were moving venue. So we've actually been doing work for like 24 months in preparation. But generally what we would do is start the preparation in about October, November, where we start putting things in place. We're already talking to our key exhibitors about where they want to be for the following year in November. So, you know, they've already looked at the plan. They've actually said that's what we want. And by the time we get to February, they're just confirming their decisions. So it's about a 15-month process. Mm-hmm. It's funny because most people just see me. I'm the one who gets interviewed. ISE is not just me. I've got a team behind me of just over about 34 people.
I was going to ask you that, like, it is, and I've met a couple of your team from the times that I've been in Munich as well. And of course, I would know some of your UK and Ireland team of Avixa, Ben and Chris and the Avixa team. But the people don't see the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes.
And there's a lot. There's really a lot. And so we started with my immediate team, who are split into operations. So they handle all the logistics about actually what happens on site. Sales, who are the interaction with all of our exhibitors, and marketing, who are the interaction between our attendees and our exhibitors. And then we have our administration, accounting, et cetera, et cetera. And what happens is those teams then work with outside organizations. So this team, let's add another part of that, which is Avixa and CEDIA. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the other stuff which goes on in training, education, conferences, the input comes from them, and there actually you find all of their people on site working behind the scenes at ISE. So it's a huge, huge operation from ourselves and the 2 associations.
I've been lining up some great interviews. Earlier on, we had Mike Blackman. He was episode 33. Now we're into episode 34, and one after the other, I think, in people that I really have wanted to nail down into a conversation. And under the spotlight, this show, episode 34, is Chris Nito. Chris, where do we begin? Where did you start off in this world of AV? Because you're quite a name in the world of AV.
Do I have to call my mom to talk about where we began? That's a little far back, but in the world of AV, I guess the world of AV started before college. I wasn't a musician like everybody else who was in this industry. I was never a roadie. I don't have an older brother where I ran sound for them, but I was an art kid in school, in high school. That's what I was. I I did art. I had this creative side to me, which was kind of cool. And I went to college for art. And quickly while I was sitting in art classes, I realized that some of these studio classes were not for me because it was forced creativity. You were told to come in and draw and be creative in this allotted time. And it was tough. I would go through like, like almost like a writer's block. I would just draw and they're like, that's not good enough. And I got upset. Was never told that it was never good enough coming through high school. I had won art competitions and stuff like that for stuff that I was doing. But when I got to college, it was like a smack in the face reality hit. Like now all of a sudden I'm questioning what I wanted to do with art going forward. So a buddy of mine calls me up and he goes, "Hey man, I'm getting a radio show." That's all right.
Is this pirate radio or real radio?
It was campus radio. It wasn't real.
Okay.
So campus radio at the time was closed circuit TV. They had real radio, but I kind of liked the closed circuit radio because there was no regulation. I can say and do whatever I want, and it was fun. There was no format. We can pick a format, do what we want. The station manager that ran it was like, "Hey, whatever you guys want to do." So my buddy Chris and I went and started up a radio show, which started off with me just playing some music. I would play a mix of alternative music and some 80s alternative and 90s stuff and stuff that I like. And we'd have, I was in a fraternity, so my fraternity brothers would call and request music. And at first it was like, hey, standard DJ thing. Eventually, Chris started talking with me. And me and Chris would eventually develop a talk show. And that was on our campus closed circuit. And we held the show on Thursday. Thursday was an interesting time because everybody was getting ready to go out. Thursday night was the big college party night. So we had like the 5 to 8 slot. It was a 3-hour slot. And we go in at 5 o'clock and go till 8. And then everybody was getting ready to go out and they would go to parties at like whatever. So they turn on their TVs while they're getting ready. And we would run contests. We ran kind of almost like a Howard Stern type show. It was we'd bring in the cafeteria ladies. We'd find people on the street. We'd bring them in. And
that just does sound like pirate radio.
completely pirate radio. We do prank calls on air. We would call people and not tell them that they were on the radio, and just all of a sudden things were being said that shouldn't have been said. And, after a while,
is this where Chris gets kicked out of college for?
Well, that part of Chris getting kicked out of college, I did on my own.
Okay.
So at 19, after about a year and a half of trying to figure this out, I quit school and I did possibly the worst thing possible. If there's any high school people listening, or if there's any college kids listening, you may want to turn this off. Parents may want to turn this off because it was a complete disaster of what happened to me. At 19, at the fall semester of my sophomore year, I decided to pull all my credits at the last possible second. What that meant was I preserved all my grades from my freshman year, right? All the classes that I was failing, I dropped. And because I waited till the last day, the bills were already paid. So my parents didn't see it. They couldn't kick me out of the campus dorm because I was more than halfway through the semester. So for the last 3-4 weeks of the semester, maybe it was about 4 weeks of the semester, I lived my best life on campus, and it was party.
Did your parents know that you had done this? No.
So I come home, and they're like, they suspected that something wasn't right. I wasn't, whatever. Their parents. This is what
Chris
they do.
looks a bit hungover.
Chris had his hair down to, grew his hair out, and my dad was not a big fan of the long hair at the time. And you look at you, what's this? You're not clean cut anymore. You're kind of like, I never see you come home on weekends only to do laundry. I never see a book. I never hear you talk about school. I said that, well, he goes, I did okay, Dad. He goes, well, we'll see when the report card comes. And that's when I said, there won't be a report card. As a matter of fact, I quit school and I haven't told you guys. So I go to one of my fraternity brothers, Dave, and he was a great guy. And I said to him, I said, Dave, I'm looking for an internship. And I know you have connections with the New York Giants. Can you get me an interview? And Dave sat me down and goes, hey, man, I'm all about you doing this, but you need to take this serious. I said, have you not seen what I've been doing the past 2 years, man? Like, the Chris that came into this fraternity and what I am now is two different things. And he said, all right, I believe you. I'll trust you. He gave me an opportunity, got me an interview with the New York Giants, and I got my internship. Justin, what I've come to the conclusion when it comes to what you need and what you never need. You never ask, you give. The more you give, the more it works, the better it works. The more opportunities I can put in front of somebody, the more advice I can help people with. I've been doing this for 20 years. At some point, right, you get to a point in your career where you want to be able to help, right? I've reached that point numerous times. And whether it's, right now we have a high school kid who joins our AV happy hours. He found me through Instagram. He joins in, he's part of the AV club at school. Like, he runs AV at high school. He's now an AV technologist because he took the course from InfoComm. He's looking to do a CTS before he graduates high school, right? I've connected him to people within school. Like, this is like, I'm not sitting here and I'm not going to take this and hang an award for doing that. That's kind of, I just think it's part of me. It's what I need to do. It's expected at this point. I carry a responsibility.
So Tom, start me off. Where did it all begin for you? What gave you your fascination of audiovisual, and how did you start about going down this career path? We'll call it a career path.
Well, and when I've done classes and stuff in the past, we could do introductions and stuff, and what you find, and it's true of me as well, a lot of us just fall into this industry by accident.
Everyone does.
Yeah, it's not, in high school or something like that, I want to grow up and be an AV person. That's just not something that anybody thinks about. As a little background, I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area, but in the 80s, I was down in the Dallas, Texas area going to school. Mm-hmm. And you had to do some campus work of some sort, and I'd been doing off-campus stuff. Last couple semesters were getting busy. And literally the thought process was no more complicated than this. I think I can hear pretty well, so let's try audio. Okay. So I actually joined the audio ministry. And the reason I did that is I felt like I could pick out sounds and what they were fairly well. And I could hear that 15.75 kilohertz from the old CRT, mm-hmm. the old horizontal frequency. Right. So if I walked into a room, I could tell whether the television was on or whether or not I could see the television. So I didn't know at the time I could hear 16K. I didn't know the technical part of that. So I joined the audio ministry, and the first thing I learned how to do was how to over and underwrap a 50-foot mic cable.
For a young person that's thinking of entering the world of audiovisual, what tips or advice could you give them?
Funny enough, and get a IT background. So get your feet wet in IT. One of the things, the differences between AV and IT, with IT, they have rules. They have standards, right? With AV, we just throw all this crazy stuff that was never meant to work together, and we hook it all up, and it's all like the Wild, Wild West. But still need to learn the technology. That's the IT part of it, okay? Learn your IT. But learn about content. What does it sound like? What do you need to be able to see it? And learn about the space, the acoustics part of it. You may not want to be a full-blown acoustician. I mean, I find acousticians are amazingly smart people. But learn about the space, learn about the content, learn how the eyes and ears work. Learn about shapes and sizes.
It's interesting that you call that information IT. Well, it's information technology, but that I still consider what those couple of things that you listed off as the audio-visual ends of.
Yeah. Well, what I mean by that is basically learn how to move content through a switch.
Yes. Yeah.
A standard off-the-shelf Ethernet switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that, to me, a personal opinion here, we've had our proprietary matrix switchers. And if you're doing just a one-room solution, all that's fine. But beyond just a one-room solution, again, this is me, I see that proprietary AV matrix switch being replaced by a standard off-the-shelf Ethernet switch.
Oh, it's already there, Tom.
It is, but it's not everywhere. It's there, and back in the day, you would start an AV design and you would use a whatever Tron switch that you want to use. That was at the heart of your system. And that was like every system you ever did. Now, every system that you do at the heart, by default, without any other consideration, is going to be an off-the-shelf Ethernet switch.
Yes. Yeah. It's true. Last episode, we had Tom Kerr on our program, formerly from Aviation. Now, we were aware that Tom was looking at a job, and it's been announced. So congratulations to Tom. We're going to give him a round of applause there. But we're going to continue on our series here. And I've got another, I hate to say former employee of Avixa, but he's going to tell a story. He's under the spotlight. Marcus, thank you so much for joining us on the All Things TechIE podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to start off, the way I ask all our Under the Spotlight guests is, where did it all begin? Like, as Tom says, you don't just wake up one day and go, I want to be an audiovisual technician.
Yeah, it really wasn't on like a list of jobs that they advertised back in school. I actually kind of got started when I was in the military. Back in 1996, I was in Bosnia, and I was actually running a video conference unit out of a tent, working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 6 months. And that was my first.
Skype, was it? It wasn't Skype.
No, we had actually an AMX system. We had a big monitor. We had a document camera, and it was. I think we did all of 4 calls a week.
Wow.
And I worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. 7 days a week. I mean, I could talk about 9/11. I was actually on a project site in right in DC, and we had no clue what was going on. We're just working. All of a sudden, air raid sirens start going off, and we're just kind of like, what the heck? And a friend called me like, we're under attack. I'm like, what? And we leave, and our office like, yes, go home. There's been these planes attacks. I lived an hour away, and after driving for 4 hours, I was only halfway home.
Wow.
Just for my office to say, come back to the office.
It's grand. Everything.
Turned around and drove another 3 hours back to the office and finally found out what happened.
Wow.
And it was like, oh, wow, oh my God. And they're like, yeah, just go to the job site tomorrow. And my office was literally right next to the Pentagon. So that was a little bit of a weird day. Just saying.
Yeah. I'm surprised anyone worked the next day in.
Well, it was because we had a contract to get the job done, and we had 3 days to finish it. And it was, let's just knock it out. We only had a little bit left. So let's just knock it out so we can not have to think about it. We can focus on what's going on in the world. I haven't met too many people that regretted going into the AV industry.
Yeah.
There's so many different facets. Just stick with it.
And we are a strong family that support one another through the tough times. Yeah. Like I know, I'm guessing you're learning that at the moment, Marcus.
Well, I've known that for a while. Scott Wills, he was the Avixa's director of international membership and all that, was my original trainer back in 2000 to get my CTS.
Yeah.
And like when I first started Avixa, like 15 years later, I was like, oh my God, you were my instructor. He's like, cool.
He didn't remember.
But because it was 15 years ago, and again, the class was like 3 days, and I didn't keep up with anybody. I just remembered his voice.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was like, I know that voice. But after a while, you kind of, I've run into a couple people who was like, oh, I was in your class. And I was like, okay, you look really familiar.
Before we start off, want to do a big shout out to a good friend and I can call him colleague now because we both work for the Higher Ed AV Media Group, and Joe Way. I was talking to Joe literally on the night, well, daytime for him, about 2 or 3 days ago, and an electrical fire, I believe, in his garage at his house, and total wipeout. Look at this photo. The AV community has come together and put a GoFundMe page up for Joe. Thankfully, he was able to rescue Christmas. Well, his wife apparently was able to rescue Christmas. He was at home when all this happened. No one was hurt. Thank God no one's hurt. Big flames, but the house is in a bit of a state of repair. And so far, there's been over $7,500 raised for Joe. Welcome along to episode 44, guys. Churning out these episodes. Hope you are keeping well. Thanks to everyone that voted for me in the AV Nation Readers' Choice Awards for 2020. Don't know what the results are yet. They will be out on the 8th of February, 2 days' time. It was an absolute honour to be pitched against Chris in the finals, Chris Netto in the finals, who does so much for the AV industry. But if you voted for me, thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll find out what the winner is in the next 2 days or so. So, going to put it out of my mind. Going to have a great episode here. We have for episode 44. We are talking to some new, well, not new, but some AV professionals that are in the Irish AV industry. Tomas McKeown, you would know from the McKeown Group if you have dealings with AV professionals in Ireland. So there's the McKeown Technologies, then they became HearWorks. And Tomas joined me under the spotlight to tell me how he got involved with the audiovisual industry and how the HearWorks was set up. Episode 44 of the All Things TechIE podcast. Lead me through the story. Where did you first begin in the world of audiovisual, or was it always like some people hear the McKeown Group and say that it's engineering? So is it an engineering background for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I could start even further back. So I suppose McKeown Group originated in 1950. Actually, family companies with my grandfather. So purely as a building contractor and a main contractor all through the years. My father took over in '79, and then I suppose I grew up with McKeown Group. Of course, was never allowed to sit still, whatever. But I studied actually telecommunications engineering in DCU, which is, I suppose, a division of the electronic engineering degree in there. And I always had a draw for all things network and all things wireless. So I fell into mainly RF engineering. So I would have done a lot with internet service providers over the years. I founded one called Ice Broadband back actually in college, and we spun it up out of college. Sold out of that in 2006, and at that stage, we were looking at setting up something new, and we decided to set it up within McKeown Group. And that's when, I suppose, at the time it was called McKeown Technology was born. Well, it's spun through a couple of names as Keel Telecommunications. And we were primarily looking at the telecoms end of things. Within about a year, we fell into the audiovisual and automation. So by 2008, we I suppose, the audiovisual division, I suppose, as it's now become, was born. And yeah, we started small. It was myself and Michael, and then a crew from there. And I suppose since about 2013, we expanded pretty rapidly. So exactly for the reasons you said there, people confuse the brands and said, well, McKeown's, are they the builders? In the noughties as well, around the same time as we set up HearWorks, we set up a mechanical and electrical division. So they all work independently within McKeown Group. And then in November 2019, which seems like yesterday in one way, but it was actually a year and a half ago, we decided to rebrand, and that's where HearWorks was born. And it was basically, I suppose the main reason was that I suppose the technology division of McKeown's had grown so much, that even in our marketing materials, it was very hard to have one LinkedIn site or one Twitter feed or whatever and talk about the two brands. You can talk about technology all day, but it's a very different audience to the kind of tried and trusted 70-year-old brand that is McKeown Group.
Absolutely. It was about time that it needed to its break away and freedom from the McKeown Group.
And we actually, one of the other reasons was we changed the name, because we were at one stage we were just saying, well, let's just call it McKeown Technology and create a new website and new whatever. But we started doing a lot of work outside of Ireland, and people outside of Ireland can't pronounce McKeown, so you get McKeon and McCoy.
Yeah, and I imagine even the McOwen and stuff like that from your name. And Under the Spotlight this month is Kevin Moore. Who's Kevin Moore? I'm sure you know the name. Kevin Moore retired in 2000. He is the Director of Creative Technology Ireland, CT Ireland, the Irish division of the International Creative Technology Group, until his retirement at the end of 2020. CT Ireland was formerly Ion Solutions and is Ireland's premier supplier of broadcast and professional AV systems, live event technical production services, and provision of managed services, and employs a total of 70 plus people in the group in Ireland. Among other achievements, Kevin was a key part of the team that was awarded an IBC Innovation Award at the 2013 IBC Convention with their client RTE and technology partner TMD for the FAST project at RTE to provide file-based ingest and transmission facilities for the Irish national broadcaster. Well, Kevin did retire in 2020, at the end of 2020, as we hit into another lockdown in Ireland, and he said he just wanted to get a couple of files in order until I nailed him down at the beginning of February and asked him, when are we doing this Under the Spotlight? And you know what? It was a great conversation. Kevin and I could have stayed on a Zoom call all night long talking about tech and his stories and everything that's going on. But I have edited the podcast and won't name the names of people that came up in the podcast because we did talk off mic for a long time afterwards. Kevin is Under the Spotlight in episode 45 of the All Things Techie podcast. Have a listen. I've been meaning to try and get hold of you for quite some time, especially when I've been at some of your road shows, and just know that you have a background in audiovisual that spans decades. I hate to say it, but Kevin is the first interviewee that we've had on the program that is actually a retired AV professional now. So
some of us would say escaped
the madness. Where did it all begin, Kevin?
I always had a love of electronics, even as a kid. And so when I finished school, I went to Carlow, regional tech as it was at the time, way before the Institute of Technology, and I did electronic engineering. So didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I kind of liked the idea of being a cameraman, although I knew nothing about what that entailed. But, you know, there aren't 1970 something, not too many jobs in cameramen around. So anyway, I saw a job advertised as a junior language lab technician with a company called AEL, who were a Belfast-based company. And so I applied for that and got the job. So my first gig was actually servicing language laboratories in colleges, Trinity and Carlow and UCD, in fact, your place, and many others, Tandberg Language Labs as they were at the time. And then the company were also involved. They were the Sony dealer at the time for Sony Video. And so I kind of liked the look at that. That looked very much aligned with what I did. So started playing around with the machines. They moved me into hire, did that for a bit. Then they moved me into sales and did that for the rest of my life, really, after that. So that's kind of how I got into it. And you know, I just seemed to have an aptitude for it, and I loved it. I mean, video, it was so exciting. It was so exotic, you know, and I lapped up everything there was to do with that.
For people entering the AV circle, what do you think is important in the educational aspect? What path would you lead them down?
For us delivering education to them, training, you know, in other words, or what they need coming into us, do you mean?
Coming into you.
Coming in. Well, okay, there's a couple of things. I think I'd really like to see the colleges in general who are specializing in those courses putting a little more energy into fundamentals of signals. I think, you know this, and most of our team know this, and I referenced it a while ago, audio. What is audio? It's not just some mythical thing that lives on an MP3. It's a waveform. How is it made up? What are harmonics? What is, all these kind of issues that people aren't taught. The same with video signals. I'm not saying that they need to get down to, 1 volt peak to peak baseband video anymore, but they should understand what is happening with a video signal. When is a video picture overexposed or underexposed? How do you compensate for exposure? The fundamentals of light that photographers learn, for instance. So I think some of that, but I think they also need to be, I suppose, taught coming in. It's a tough game. It's a tough game in the early years. And when you come in as a junior technician in whatever arena, you're going to be working very hard for a couple of years with pretty much no nightlife and no weekend life, and get over it, because that's the industry you're in. If you can come into it with that passion, then it's the most rewarding thing you could possibly have.
We are on episode 46 of the All Things Techie podcast. We finally have found Simon Lang. He's at a high-rise tower across. Is that Dublin City?
No, it looks like it's San Francisco, but I'm definitely I think it's San Francisco. I'm the furthest you could get from snow. Oh, maybe. Don't know. Anyway, not in Ireland.
It's not in Ireland, but he is in Ireland. He's not broken his quarantine limit. He hasn't you haven't been given a vaccine yet, Simon.
No, definitely not.
You're not. And
I discovered I had a look at the priority list the other day, and woohoo, I realized I can move one level up due to the company I work for is an entertainment company, which is one step higher than the second last level that I was originally on.
Really, I didn't even know you could actually look up this type of stuff. So you can sort of try and guesstimate when you're going to.
Because actually, to be honest, I actually looked up for you too, because you actually fall in the same category as me. Is third level institutions and entertainment are in the same category.
We are still in level 5 lockdown. By the time this show airs, we might know, are we allowed to even go a bit further than our 5 kilometre radius outdoors, apparently, which might be extended, as the newspaper reports today say, to 10 kilometres. Woo! Which 90% of people in Ireland are probably breaking at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm managing director of CT Ireland. We were acquired by NEP probably 2 years ago now, just over 2 years ago, and we're part of the NEP group. Alan Burns is NEP and has been part of that family for a little bit longer. So where did this come from? This came from a number of discussions that the likes of myself and Alan have had over the years about the difficulty in getting people into the industry, people arriving in the industry, perhaps, not really, ready for the type of work and the type of industry that we are. And we looked at colleges, and Alan had previously run, and you'll talk about it, a similar scheme to this in the broadcast side when it was observed. And we sat down and spoke about it, and we decided, okay, we've got 2 companies here that probably employ close to 200 people in Ireland. Alan has the broadcast side of his business, the OB trucks, and we have the live events side and the systems integration side and managed services. And the concept was that we would work together. We're all part of the NEP family, and we would produce a graduate program to bring people into the industry, and we would take them through both companies over a period of 2 years. They'll do a quarter in CT, and then they'll do a quarter in NEP, and we'll rotate them through the system like that. We'll give them the Avixa qualifications. We're working with Avixa. On the broadcast side, Alan will put them through the NEP University online training programs. And the goal, I suppose, is really that at the end of that period, we'd like to think that we will retain these people, and that they'll be trained, and that they'll have some real hands-on experience in the industry. So that's kind of where it came from.
Now, I recorded this program with Simon earlier in the week, and then it sort of sat in my inbox, and I did absolutely nothing with it, listeners. And then some things have changed. God, a lot of things have changed in the week. So congratulations to Mrs. and Mrs. Lang with the birth of their new baby son. So Benjamin, I can't wait to give you cuddles when I get vaccinated. Really can't wait. Little baby boy, congratulations, Simon and Anne. Before we recorded this program, Simon was getting everything ready, or he said he was ready. So it's episode 48 of the All Things Techie podcast. In the meantime, a new baby's been born. Congratulations to Simon and Anne on the birth of their son. Really healthy baby, healthy mommy, and great to see. And 47, we have to just say 47. What a great episode. I'm talking to Simon's bosses in plural, and the new educational courses that they're doing. God, Simon, I tell you something, if I was younger and starting off, like, it's talking to John, it's the fact of the matter is you don't need to have leaving cert, big points behind you to go into a course like this. It's people that are showing their interest. And again, we're going to throw up the website again. The applications are still open. That's all we're going to say about it. And best of luck. We have no say in the matter of who gets into the placements, either does Simon. So we'll just throw that out. But what a great start of something in Ireland and making Ireland a bit of a tech hub for a learning environment with audiovisual technology. Definitely think that's a big step in the right direction. Ireland has been crying out for something like this, and I think we can. Well, I think CT and can do that as well, and the NEP group can do something really cool going forward with that.
It's interesting, actually. I was just chatting with my wife about this earlier today because our son just finished his school and he's going through the interview process, and we were talking about the differences in hers and my career. Hers was pretty prescribed. She got a degree in accounting and business administration. She got a job as an accountant, then she got promoted to a controller. My pathway into Avixa is far more circuitous than that type of a pathway. My degree is actually in international politics.
It's not the weirdest one I've heard, because Mark Coxson told me that he studied veterinary, and how you end up from being a vet to doing AV, I think it has to be the most bizarre one. If you had advice for anyone that's entering into the AV industry, and this is my final question, if you had advice, I know we've come to a pandemic, what advice would you give someone that's thinking AV is their area of trade?
Pay attention to the art and the science. The magic of our industry is the marriage of the two, and not either or on its own. And then recognize, in fact, that is magic and it is valuable. I don't know why. I think maybe because half of the people in our industry are failed rock musicians or failed musicians, but there's this sense of humility within our industry that at one hand is what I love about our industry, because it's really hard to build a career in our industry. There isn't an ascribed path where you have trade position 1 that turns into trade position 2. You have to find your way through this industry and find a path and develop skills in an unstructured way. And so I think in some ways we weed out people that don't have heart that are in this industry. But then we just have this sense of almost apology that, we're not musicians and we're not IT, and don't recognize that by virtue of being part of both of those, we are uniquely qualified to deliver value in virtually every marketplace.
There you have it, listeners. The All Things Techie podcast, episode 50. Look back on all the past 3 years of our podcast. Plenty more to come. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this podcast. Tell all your friends about it. It's audiovisual and technology from an Irish perspective. We'll see you in episode 51. Goodbye.